Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Mawlana Kamil Uddin to our branch. Alhamdulillah. Allah bless him and his family taking the time out to join us today. Alhamdulillah, today's topic and discussion will be the Qur'anic theme of unity, which Mawlana Kamil will be speaking to us about today. Mawlana Kamil Uddin is librarian of Darul Iftā. Our library is Mawlana Anwar Shah Kashmiri Library. He's also the chair of the Department of Qur'anic Exegesis, which is Tafsir. MashaAllah, Mawlana Kamil Uddin was born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and he completed the memorization of the Quran while he was in high school and subsequently enrolled into the Alim program in the Institution of Islamic Education. At the Institute, Mawlana Kamil completed his Aliyah program and degree, and he graduated in 2011. And his special interest is tafsir and ulum al-Quran, and that's what he specializes in, mashallah. And he's a chair of the Department of Qur'anic Exegesis at Darul Iftā. Additionally, Mawlana Kamil has also completed his BA in Organizational Leadership from Benedictine University and MLIS, which is Master of Library Science, Library and Information Science from Dominican University. So alhamdulillah, without further ado, inshallah, we'll start our lecture for today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح. Alhamdulillah, it's a great honor, privilege to be at Darul Qasim Knoxville branch. MashaAllah, beautiful place, beautiful campus, and beautiful people. Allah Ta'ala increase us in mahabbah and in unity. Ameen Ya Rabb. In terms of today's talk on the Quranic theme of unity, we'll start with the Quran itself. You know, the Quran, it itself gives the viewpoint of wahda, of i'tilaf, of unity. The Quran describes itself, وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. That if the Quran was from someone else, if the Quran was a human invention, or it had authorial input from other than Allah, لو كان من عند غير الله, if the Quran was from other than Allah, لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا, you would find many contradictions, you would find many differences and disputes. But the Quran does not have any contradiction. The deen itself does not have any contradiction. It may have differences. It may have what we call ikhtilaf tala'um, the differences that fit together like pieces of a puzzle. And these differences may be, for example, in qira'at. There are different modes of reciting the Quran. But each qira'ah, you're looking at the same thing. كأنك تنظر إلى بيت واحد من جهات مختلفة. It's as if you're looking at one house, but this qira'ah gives you an aerial view. This qira'ah gives you the view of the front yard. This qira'ah, if you're really lucky, the mufassir takes you inside the house, right? And it's an amazing experience that the mufassir is able to do this. But the Quran has this type of, it needs to be recognized. You know, once my brother was visiting a masjid, and he sent me a picture of an ayah from Surah An-Nur. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. This ayah speaks about the houses of Allah Ta'ala in which the dhikr of Allah is raised. And the reason why he sent me the picture, he said, look at what they did at this masjid. The normative qira'ah that people really are familiar with is the riwayah of Hassan Asim. which reads as يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ. But other riwayat and qira'at read it as يُسَبَّحُ with a fathah. And so what this masjid did, they probably ordered this from North Africa, in which in the other qira'ah is predominant. What they did was they broke the fathah on top and they put it on the bottom to change it into a kasra. They didn't realize that this is the ikhtilaf that is actually needed in the Quran. It gives you another vantage point to view the Quran, and it is truly the type of difference that adds flavor, it adds color, and the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam described believers as al-mu'minu yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da kal-bunyan. Believers are like bricks on a building. Each brick is not carrying the same weight as someone else, but each brick is important. And it yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. That brick solidifies the brick next to it, and it solidifies the brick next to it. And this, when we talk about unity through the Quran, we look at the human institution, which is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the walking, talking Quran, and he exemplified this unity, this i'tilaf, this joining of the hearts, this oneness in the greatest of ways. Has anyone here heard of Salatul Khawf? Salatul Khawf. No? تفضل.
Yeah, Salatul Khawf is when people are scared of something, then they will establish the Salah and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the fear of something that is going to come or befall on them.
Nah. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they had, one would think, like when in jihad, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum prayed Salatul Khawf in a very unique way. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is leading the Salah. And who wouldn't want to stand behind Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Well, they could have made two jama'ats, right? One Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam leads, another someone else leads. But no, what did they do? They prayed the Salatul Khawf, in which Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam led the jama'ah. And in the first rak'ah, some men stood behind him and the others stood guarding against the enemy in jihad. And then they switched. In the second rak'ah, they came and prayed behind Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and this group went to stand guard against the enemy. This is the unity that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught in jama'ah. Not in the salah itself. No one wanted to miss an opportunity behind Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. To pray behind him is a fadila in and of itself, which is why the rank of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is so high. The rank of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is so high because of this. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was sick, he did not command anyone else to lead salah besides Abu Bakr. Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Only let Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu lead the prayer. No one else. Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. And based upon the imam of salah, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum chose the imam of the ummah, which was the first Khalifa Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So the importance of staying together is very important. Salah in jama'ah is that much more in reward than salah outside of jama'ah. Right? So this idea of praying together, staying united, is very important. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was the epitome of this. In the Battle of Uhud, there was a very turbulent time. And that was when the archers left their position and the tides of the battle changed. And the Muslims radiallahu anhum suffered severe consequences. After that, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told these archers not to move from their position. He told them not to move. But when they saw the Muslims were on the brink of victory, they came down from their positions to gather the spoils of war and enjoy in the early victory. But it was a costly mistake because Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was not yet Muslim, saw this, and he turned around and he attacked from the rear. And the Muslims suffered great losses. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in this time period in which the Muslims could become disjointed, the Quran describes him describes the character of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا, if you were tough and coarse with them at that time, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, having no compassion in your heart, لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, all of your companions would have dispersed from you. But at that time, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam showed poise. At that time, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam showed the character of unity, and he joined them. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Allah Ta'ala is commanding Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, forgive them. Take their consultation. Take their mashwara. You cannot do this alone. The work of the ummah cannot be done alone. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam corralled the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and unified them. And so he is the epitome of Qur'anic unity. And the Quran speaks about this in many different ayat. Another ayat that speaks about this is وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold on to the rope of Allah together. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. This ayah was revealed in the context of Aus and Khazraj. If you look at these two companions, these two groups, these two tribes prior to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam coming to Medina, they were at each other's throats the entire time. And so there was a quarrel that happened. And Allah Ta'ala revealed these ayat, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold on firmly to the rope of Allah Ta'ala. What does this rope do? And what is this rope? If you think about a very slippery slope, like you're walking across a very narrow bridge, holding onto a rope gives you stability. In that turbulent time, holding onto this rope gives you stability, and you're able to cross what you need to cross. This is the picture that the Quran is portraying. And what is that rope? The Quran. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Do not disperse. After you have become Muslim, do not disperse into these factions. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember the blessings of Allah upon you. Especially Aus and Khazraj, but others as well. إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءَ فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Remember when you were enemies at each other's throats and Allah Ta'ala joined your hearts. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. And because of that, you became brethren in deen, in wilayah. You became brethren. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ. The only thing that separated you from Jahannam was death. The Quran describes وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. That you were on the brink of the hellfire. The only thing between you and the hellfire was death. That was the only thing between you and the hellfire. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَأَنْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا. And Allah saved you. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. This is the way Allah Ta'ala describes the signs for you so that you may be guided. So the question that comes up is, we have this unity and we know that it is important, right? We know that being alone is not a good place to be. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam describes that person who stands alone as فَإِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُ الذِّئْبُ الْقَاسِيَةِ. The parables and the imagery that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam gives is quite amazing. He says that the qasiyah is that if you're a shepherd and you have your flock of sheep, the qasiyah is that sheep that runs away. فَإِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُ الذِّئْبُ الْقَاسِيَةِ. The wolf goes after the lone sheep. That's the way that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has described these individuals who want to track their own way, circumvent the entire tradition. No, I'm the only Muslim here. I'm the only one that's doing it right. فَإِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُ الذِّئْبُ الْقَاسِيَةِ. Remember this advice of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the wolf consumes that lone sheep, and you are a sheep in the eyes of shaitan, right? There's a conversation of sha'ir in which he's conversing with Iblis, and Iblis is talking about, man, when I was in my heyday, I was going against Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anh. Now these are sheep to me. I can puppet master. I can tell them to go each and every way and they'll follow me. But there are challenges and there are impediments to this unity. And there are challenges that every Muslim faces, and then there are challenges that are specific and impediments to our time and our context. In regards to challenges that every Muslim faces, it doesn't matter what age they live in, who they are, Muslims must think about and reflect on what type of situation they'll have after they die. After they die, they have to face a situation. And every Muslim has to think about that. What will they do in that time period? And so whenever we stand up and perform in a program, we take the necessary steps to organize an event, a dini event, our minds go to this, naturally speaking, our mind goes to this idea that this event is for others, right? Everybody else needs Islah. I don't need Islah. I'm doing this event for them. I don't need Islah. This is me setting it up for others and for their benefit. And so this is internally, we think that we are free of that deficiency and fault. And what happens because of this is a lack of barakah, a lack of nur, and eventually failure. And so how did the Sahaba radiallahu anhum deal with this problem? All right? And you want to know how they believed, because the Quran describes their iman. فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If you believe as the Sahaba believed, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. Then you have hidayah. You cannot circumvent the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and think that you can attain hidayah. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum are who they are, chosen by Allah Ta'ala to be the initial mukhatabeen, the initial addressee of the Quran. And so the way that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum dealt with this was constant muhasabah, constant self-reflection and introspection. Hanzala radiallahu anhu, one day he was sitting with his family and it just dawned upon him. It just dawned upon him the difference in his state between how he is with his family and how he is when he's with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was night and day. And something clicked in his mind, and he said that he left his house in angst and in worry, repeating to himself, Nafaqa Hanzala, Nafaqa Hanzala. Hanzala has become a munafiq. And on the way, he met Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And he told Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu that when I am with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, كَأَنَّا رَأْيَ عَيْنٍ, as if I see Jannah and Jahannam in front of me. And then when I go back home, I'm throwing my kids around, I'm playing with them, I lose all sense of Jannah and Jahannam, and I'm just with my family. And so Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says the same. He's like, same thing happens to me. When I'm with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this happens, and when I'm at home, it's not the same elevated state of iman. And so they both come to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stating that they feel like hypocrites. Nafaqa Hanzala. Right? They're saying Hanzala has become a munafiq. They feel like hypocrites because of what has gone on in the disparity between life with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and life when he's not in front of them. And so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam put their worries to ease. He said, "Sa'atan fa sa'a." There's a time for this and there's a time for that. You're not always going to be at this elevated peak of being in the best state of iman, in the most pious state of reflection. Sa'atan fa sa'a. Sometimes you'll be here and sometimes you'll be there, and everybody deserves their haqq. Right? A'ti kulla dhi haqqin haqqah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said elsewhere, give everyone who deserves a right upon you their due right. Give everyone who deserves a right that is due upon you their due right. And so, but think about this mindset of Hanzala radiallahu anhu. He's with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he's still thinking about possibly being a munafiq. This wasn't just lip service. Umar radiallahu anhu, he has heard from the lips of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam the description of his palace in Jannah. Umar radiallahu anhu has heard directly from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam his palace in Jannah. He has heard Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam describe to him his palace in Jannah. Umar radiallahu anhu would ask Huzayfah ibn al-Yaman, who was Sahib al-Sir, the one who knew of the list of hypocrites in Medina. Umar radiallahu anhu knew Hudayfa knew who they were. Umar radiallahu anhu would ask Huzayfa, Ana minhum? I'm in that list? He has heard from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he is his palace in Jannah, but he still has this muhasaba of himself. What does this mindset tell you? This mindset tells you to stay in the mode of islah, because there is no guarantee of husnul khatimah. There is no guarantee for anyone that they will die on iman. You have iman right now, right? You are coming to the masjid right now. You are reading Quran right now. You may be preparing for Ramadan right now, but there is no guarantee for you that you will remain in this way. So this is a major impediment and a challenge against the i'tilaf and unity that the Quran speaks about. And so this is something that every Muslim must do. They must take self-account and muhasabah every day, especially at night before one goes to bed. Take muhasabah of themselves, and that will help, because the greater you are internally, the greater you are, the greater asset you can be to this ummah. Right? When you are a soldier in battle and you are in the ranks, the greater you are, and the stronger you are as a believer. Al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if. The strong believer, in the sense of spiritual, physical, mental, and every other aspect. The strong believer is better than the weak believer. He's more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. And so qu anfusakum, save yourself first. Wa ahlikum nara, which comes to my second point. That save your family as well. That it is important for Muslims, in what is an impediment to this unity that the Quran speaks about is a Muslim family and the infrastructure of a Muslim family. It is necessary for Muslims to know the educational system that they are living in, to know the American context and how to deal with it. And know that Islam's education is not a halaqah-based education. The education of Islam, it has a structured learning of Islam with a particular pedagogy, will also aid in this unity, because it brings the entire ummah to a particular standard. And qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Do this, save yourself and your family from the fire. So it's important for us to branch out in this way that Allah Ta'ala has told us. So these are some of the challenges. Another challenge to our unity that is very difficult, but also very important at the same time, is that along with recognizing that we live in a non-Muslim land, and while we are doing islah and rectification and reform of ourselves, we must at the same time remember and recognize that we have to be an example. We have to be the standard of how human beings should live in this world. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wasn't just the strongest human being physically. He wasn't just the most intelligent human being. He was a perfect human being in all facets of character and ethics. And it's very vital for us and extremely important that we be a good example and a means that inspires and brings people closer to Allah Ta'ala in a compelling way, and not be something that pushes people against and puts a wedge between them and Islam, drives people away from Islam. Waliyadu billah. So how we live as a neighbor, how we live as an employer, employee, a citizen of the US can be the only tangible exposure that some have to Islam. So if we have a miserly interaction with someone, that could be reflective of how they view Islam. If we have a negative interaction with someone, that is our fault. That could be, the way that people perceive Islam. And so we shouldn't, just because a person is non-Muslim, if we always have this mindset, oh, this person is a kafir, he doesn't deserve a good deal, he doesn't deserve a fair deal in my business, I should take him for every penny he's worth. Then if that person, their exposure to Islam may be just you, and if you drive that wedge between him and Islam, then that's a problem. Think some of us are here from the subcontinent. How do you think Islam came to the subcontinent? The Sahaba radiallahu anhum came there, not on jihad, not on tabligh. They came there for business. Right? And if they had this mindset that I'm going to take every penny's worth from this individual, do you think that Islam would have spread there? No. They looked at the ethics of these people. They looked at the character of these people, and they recognized that we want to be them. We want to be them. And so if they thought to treat this person as just everyday kafir, then do with them what they want. So there are examples upon example in this regard. In the Battle of Khaybar, when the Muslims had sieged the Jews in Medina who had acted treacherously against the Muslims. There was a Abd Habshi, and there was an Ethiopian slave who was the shepherd of the flock of the Jews of Khaybar. He came out and he saw that this person is Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is not too far away, and he wanted to know what was going on. And so he went to find out information on who this man is. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him the message of Islam is quite simple. Take people out of the slavehood of worshiping human beings into the worship of Allah Ta'ala. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. A simple message. And this is the time in which war has been declared. Between the Muslims and the Jews, the war has been declared. And so this person asked Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what will I receive if I become Muslim? So what is for you is what is for all Muslims, and what is due upon you is what is due upon all Muslims. Right now, it's not a time for salah. Right now, it's not time for Ramadan. Right now, it's not time for any other ibadat. If you want to join the Muslims, you can join in this battle. And so he joined. He became Muslim and he joined the ranks of the believers. But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, return this flock back to the Jews. He said, return this flock back to the Jews. It's a time of war. Not only is the enemy's blood halal, their wealth is halal as well. The enemy's blood, it can be shed. It's a time of war. And their wealth can be seized. It's permissible. But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not want this man to think that Muslims are individuals who act treacherously, like the Jews did in Medina. And so he sent that flock back. And this was a time in which some of the Sahaba were starving. Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa states, "Asabatna maja'a," that we were starving to such an extent that we were hunting some of the wild donkeys for meat. That's how and this had this huge flock. Why not take advantage of it? It's because of this character, of how he wanted this person to feel Islam at this critical juncture. And then the battle ensued. This person was struck with an arrow and was killed. He did not pray one salah. He did not fast one fast. He did not do any hajj or umrah. He did not give zakah, but he was a shaheed. Right? This individual lived a life of a martyr. When we give da'wah, those of you involved in some chaplaincy, you go to a hospital bed At that moment, that person, because of the character, because of the rapport that you built with them, they accept Islam, not having done anything, but they accept Islam. This is the character that we want to show. Huzaifa radiallahu an, the same individual that I was referring to, Huzaifa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu an, he became Muslim, and he hadn't yet met with the believers in Medina earlier on in Badr. He was on his way to join Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in Medina, and then he came across Abu Jahl and the mushrikeen of Mecca, and they stopped him, and they said, he said, I'm going to meet Muhammad and join him. He said, if you're going there, we're not going to let you go. And so he made him take an oath that if you go there, that you're not going to join the ranks. Imagine Badr. Huzaifa radiallahu anh comes, and he says, I only gave them this oath because they had a sword to my neck, a bullet to my head. That's the only reason why I gave them my word that I would not join you. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't let him partake in this battle. Battle of Badr. Huzaifa radiallahu anh is listed to have participated in all the other battles, but he wasn't allowed to participate in the battle of Badr, because what was this critical juncture that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was concentrating on? That Muslims are not people who take oaths and then break them. Right? Many of these mushrikeen who came to fight at Badr later on became Muslim, and this was a reflective upon them. This act that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow Huzaifa in a critical juncture in which they're outnumbered 3-1. He didn't allow him to partake in this battle. This time and again, these stories occur. Khubayb radiallahu anh, he's another example of this. After the battle of Badr occurred, the mushrikeen captured Khubayb treacherously, and they brought him back to Mecca, and they sold him to Harith, whose father was killed in Badr. And so what he did was he was going to make this entire scene in terms of the killing of Khubayb as a retribution for the people that were killed in Badr. And so Khubayb was a prisoner in his house. One day he borrowed a razor to take care of his necessities, and a child came into the area where Khubayb was. And Khubayb radiallahu anhu, as was the practice of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he would see a child, he would give him love, give him attention. So he grabbed the child, and the sister of this child wasn't too far away seeing this. She became extremely frightened because Khubayb had a razor and he had this child. And Khubayb radiallahu anhu saw the color change on the sister's face. And he said to her, I'm not like you. I'm not like you. Right? You think I would hurt this child? Khubayb, he has the legitimacy. He has the right to hold this child as a hostage. They took him treacherously. And later on, he was killed, shaheed. But Khubayb radiallahu anh did not want to give these individuals, drive a wedge between these individuals and Islam. And that was the unity that was instilled within the Sahaba radiallahu anhum from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which is why the Quran states, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. That if you believe like they believed, if you believe like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had Iman, then you have Hidayah. If you think you have Iman outside of the belief of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, then you don't have the Hidayah that the Quran is speaking about. And so Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam speaks about this in a hadith. He says, اقرأوا القرآن ما ائتلفت قلوبكم فإذا اختلفتم فقوموا عنه. That read the Quran as long as your hearts are joined together. When your hearts are joined together, then read the Quran. If you are in dispute, if you are at each other's throats, فقوموا عنه. Then leave the Quran for now. This is not the time to engage with the Quran if your hearts are not together. And so the hearts coming together is a prerequisite for understanding the Quran. اقرأوا القرآن ما ائتلفت قلوبكم. As long as your hearts have this inclination towards one another, wanting good for one another, this is something that is understood. Look, if you look at the walls of Darul Qasim, they have the quotes of Shaykh Amin Hafidahullah. One of those quotes states about understanding the rules of the Akhirah. Dunya starts to make sense, right? In the Akhirah, سبعة يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. There will be extreme heat, and only 7 factions will have the shade of Allah Ta'ala, the shade of Allah Ta'ala's throne. 7 factions of people. And amongst those, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam describes رَجُلَانِ تَحَابَّا فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ. 2 Muslims who love one another for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. رَجُلَانِ تَحَابَّا فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ. They join and meet one another for the sake of Allah, and they disperse and go their separate ways with Allah in mind. And so this understanding that this is the scene that you want to be in. You want to be amongst those individuals who have that shape. Otherwise, the sweat will come up and engulf you. It will start at your ankles, build up to your knees and up to your shoulders, and you will be engulfed in your own sweat on the day of judgment. And so only Allah Ta'ala can give this unity. No one else. This unity within Salah, this unity in the Quran is only something that is God-given. لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم. If you spent everything in this world, all material aspects, you spent everything in this world, ما ألفت بين قلوبهم. You wouldn't be able to join their hearts. ولكن الله ألف بينهم. Allah is the one who joins their hearts. إنه عزيز حكيم. He is almighty. He is all wise. Recognize this izzah and hikmah from Allah Ta'ala. Recognizing this izzah and hikmah from Allah Ta'ala is what will bring us together. Inshallah, with that, I'll open the floor for any questions. Inshallah. Mahmoud, questions? Is there any questions online?
Could you elaborate more on the context of when you're when you said that recite the Quran when your hearts are together, and if your hearts are not together, could you just elaborate on the fact, like the latter part of it? So
yes, this is a very heart-piercing statement of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he states, "Read the Quran while your hearts are together." Yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question from the brother is in regards to the hadith, "اقرأوا القرآن ما ائتلفت قلوبكم فإذا اختلفتم فقوموا عنه." That this latter part of this hadith, this speaks about if you are dispersed, then stand away from the Quran. What does this mean? So the Quran is, it describes itself as يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. There are many that are guided through the Quran. There are many that are misguided. And so when a person themselves are not open to change, when they're not open to reform, or they're not open to the Quran itself and the guidance of the Quran, it's very important that we don't just start telling individuals about aspects of the Quran that they are not ready and prepared for. And so the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would give da'wah, it wouldn't just be a cookie cutter form of da'wah that everybody gets the same treatment, but rather he knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it. And so when he would give individuals advice from the Quran, or when he would recite from the Quran, he would do so in a way that brought them closer to the Quran, knowing where they are right now and where they could be. So, for example, when the Muslims had to initially go to Habasha, before their migration to Medina, the awwal hijrah, the first hijrah was from Mecca to Habasha, to what is modern day Ethiopia. And there lived Najashi, who became later on became Muslim, radiyallahu anhu. When the Muslims migrated there, the mushrikeen of Mecca couldn't fathom that the Muslims are living peacefully, and they wanted them to be under their control and submission, and as they were torturing them. And so they sent Amr ibn al-As. He was known as Dahiyat Quraysh. He was known as a mastermind of the Quraysh. They sent him to convince Najashi to send the Muslims back. Amr al-As later on became Muslim, radiallahu anhu, along at the same time as Khalid ibn Walid, radiallahu anhu. So Amr al-As went there with loads of gifts, and he comes to Najashi, and he says to Najashi, you know, these people who have taken refuge in your land, they've abandoned our religion, and they haven't entered into your deen either. You're a Christian. They abandoned ours, and they haven't entered yours. So, you know, let us deal with them. We know who they are. We know what is necessary. And so what happened was Najashi was a very wise king, and he said, I'm not going to let them go unless there's a court here. And so the Muslims appointed Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, who was the older brother of Ali, radiallahu anhu. They appointed him as their spokesperson. And at that time, Ja'far knew exactly what to recite to Najashi to bring him to tears. He knew exactly what to recite. He recited from the initial ayat of Surah Maryam that speaks about Maryam alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam and their status. And he said to Najashi, he said, this is what Amr ibn al-As told Najashi, asked them what they believe about Isa alayhi salam. And Ja'far radiallahu anhu stated, نَقُولُ فِيهِ مَا جَاءَ بِهِ نَبِيُّنَا, that sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that we will say about Isa alayhi salam what Rasulullah told us to say about him. Right? And then he recited from the ayat of Surah Maryam. And then Ja'far stated, ask them what they believe about Isa alayhi salam. They're mushrikeen, right? They ask them what they believe. And so what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is stating here is that there is a method to bringing people close to the Quran. We're not this method of just handing out translations of the Quran. Every dormitory, every hospital, every room, every hotel room. That's not the method of da'wah that we abide by. Right? Just giving people access to the translation of the Quran is just as dangerous, and will turn people away, and have turned people away. For there may be some individuals that became Muslim, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the principle of how to give da'wah. And so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is highlighting this fact that when amongst Muslims, if you bring an ayah to them and they are not ready to handle that, you put them on the brink of kufr. And why are you pushing them in the direction of Iblis? If you disperse, first come together, and then you can approach the Quran. Otherwise, it could be a dangerous phenomenon.
You had touched a little bit about unity in the family and the explanation of Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum. And I think one of the nasiha that you gave is to understand Islam at a certain level and understand there's a pedagogy that we follow in learning Islam. Can you give a little more practical nasiha on this point to us, inshallah?
Jazakallah khairan. The question is in regards to the practical level of Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, that we don't just sprinkle education over the education that already exists. We have to understand that the American education system is focused on Euro-American theories in education. And that comes with power. The philosophy of their education, it comes with the power that they have. So as Muslims, we infuse Islam into every aspect of what we do, whether it be culture, food, sports. It's infused into everything. Islam is not just a part-time aspect for us. It's infused into our everyday life. And the ayah that really represents this is أَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا. When Zakaria alayhi salam took the care of Maryam alayhi salam under his wing, it's described as أَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا. That like a plant, every plant, those of you that are involved in having plants and know how they work, from the amount of sunlight you give to it, the amount of water that it needs, the size of the plant container, all of that plays a role in this. And so it's a gradual progression. Children do not need to be exposed to every wrong thing that is out there just for the purpose of exposure. أَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا. Look at them as if they are plants. Teach them to make wudu and pray salah at the age of 7. Spank them at the age of 10 if they don't do it properly. Teach them in a way that brings them towards Allah and building the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَمَثَلُ كَلِمَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. Most of what the work you do is underground, just like a tree. Its strength doesn't come from the branches that you see. The strength of a tree comes from the roots in the ground that you don't see. And that's how we treat children. That's how we should treat our family. Not everybody sees this, nor should you want everybody to see this. Don't put your stuff on social media, oh, my child did this, and then I'm looking for as many likes and retweets as possible. That's not the method to grow and nurture your child. And so this is the ayah that is the axle and the epitome of this. إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.